Born in Solihull, Birmingham.
Yeah.
With stints in the north of England. How did you find yourself in Hamburg at Harvestehuder?
So when I was at Bowden, we had a German guy come over, a guy called Stefan Platz, who ended up as assistant coach to the team that I went to out in Hamburg. So I was finishing uni. I was like, I fancy doing something here. So I just called him because there was a previous guy from my old club who had already been there and was out there at the time. So I just called him and just like, hey Steph, like, you got any spaces basically? I'd be pretty keen to come. And because I'd basically had a really good year when he was around, he was like, yeah, we'll have a look. I was like, I've got a housemate who's pretty keen to come as well. Like, how does that work? He was like, yeah, bring him along. Flew over for a weekend, did some training with them, went on a night out with them, nearly missed a flight in the morning. And that was kind of it, sold. Yeah, and arguably one of the best years of my life, just in terms of a learning curve. You're out of university, everything's new, you're in a different city, different language. So going to language school in the day and then coming to train in the evening or coach in the evening was a pretty eye-opening experience, I must admit.
How's the German now?
Oh, terrible. Frustratingly not as good as what it should be.
Nicht sehr gut.
Nicht so good.
What are the main differences in culture and playing styles that you experienced?
Whilst I was away, or?
Yeah.
So we had a guy called Christoph Beckmann as a coach who was, some would say difficult, I would not say. Everything was black and white. So if, for example, we were playing in a game and I missed an aerial, so I just mistrapped a ball, they went and scored. I didn't stop hearing about it for 15 minutes. This bloke was just going at me. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then he takes you off and sits you on the bench for 15 minutes and you're like, cool, this is a different way of life. Whereas previously you'd get coaches a bit softer, a bit more comfortable with you, like, it's just a mistake, don't worry about it. Which was great for me as a player because I was quite a nervous player. So I wobble a bit. I used to have real confidence dips going through the age groups as well. So I used to really lose myself in games, and kind of what I learned that year was I had to harden up a bit, which was a real, obviously it's the classic extreme of like old school coaching is you kind of, people look at it quite negatively, whereas I look at it quite positively, which is quite bizarre. So I really enjoyed the black and white scenario of it all because it just made me have to be more confident in myself. One thing I did find really weird as a culture was, so when we arrived at every training session, every pitch, every time we met as a group, you'd always greet each person individually. You'd say hello individually to each person. There could be 25 of you and you'd have to walk around every single person to say hi, which I love. I think that's great because you're constantly just, I've been reading a book on culture recently and it's basically just reaffirming a relationship with each person, which is amazing when you look at a business and you look at things like that. Like, it's amazing. They say that basically if you create more and more collisions, basically more and more contact points with people, you're more and more likely to solve problems together. I just thought it was quite interesting. So yeah, that's for me a different culture to what you say is England, where you just rock up and you just turn up and you train and then you go home and that's it.
It's fascinating.
I think it's interesting when you
experience.
and you read like, so I've read Dietmar Haman's autobiography as well, and he talks about the German culture versus the English culture, having lived here for so long, and he talks about basically just everything's just team first, and to be fair, it is majority of the time here, but it is a different feel over there. That's something I definitely do miss from having over there that we don't have here.